Good afternoon, guys. Um, so happy that you guys could make it to this online lecture. So, if you were live streaming with me this morning in Google Meets, you'll know that I've been having issues with my connection. I'm sorry that this video wasn't uploaded sooner. I am contacting my internet provider to see what's going on and to see if there's any kind of fixes to this problem. So I don't think that this will be an issue on Wednesday, so please make sure you are in Google Meets on Wednesday so that we can continue our awesome lecture over Herbert Walker Bush. So, um, with that said, just a couple of quick reminders. Just remember, guys, late work's going to be 15 points. So, I've noticed that some of you have not turned in your Google Classroom work. Um, Somebody mentioned that they weren't getting notifications. I understand that and I get it. But just know every Monday and Wednesday I'm going to be uploading lectures. So, and there's going to be assignments posted on Google Classroom. So it's really important for you to make sure you're getting those done on time. Okay. So you've got 2 days. So today's Monday. At the end of Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. That's when it's after that it's considered late. So when you are, most of you have been doing an excellent job with this, and I know that this online platform is new for some of us, but you guys, for overall, for the majority of you, you've been doing awesome with Google Classroom. One thing to remember is please make sure you submit your work. So at the top right of your screen, when it's time to, I think it's at the top right, when it's time to submit those assignments, please make sure you're submitting them. Otherwise, it shows up as missing, and it will show up as a incomplete grade for you. So please, please, please make sure you are submitting your work. Let's go ahead and start on the do now. So there's a few questions there. Number one is what is inflation? So if you're not sure, make sure you look that up on Google and explain its impact on the economy. Number two, what is the significance of the falling of the Berlin Wall? Remember, Berlin Wall is located in the center of Berlin, the city, the capital of Germany. Uh, when the Berlin Wall was in place, it separated the West, that was supported by the Allies in the U.S., and the East, that was supported by the Communists and the Soviets, right? So after the Berlin Wall falls, what is that? What is the significance of that? What does that mean? Think in context of the Cold War, think in context of communism. What does that mean? And number three, write whether you agree or disagree and explain why. You should always stand up for what is right, even if it means someone else might get in trouble. So go ahead and pause the video, get those knocked out, and then go ahead and let's start this lecture up again, okay? Okay, so let's move on. So today we are going to describe and evaluate through sequencing H.W. Bush's domestic policies. So we talked about the 70s, the late 70s, into the early 80s with Carter, and then we moved on to Reagan up until the late 80s. If you remember, with Carter, we had stagflation because OPEC, right? That collection of countries that export oil, they put in place an embargo on the United States, which means that they stop selling oil to the U.S., right? And so that hurts the economy. We experience stagflation, right? Rising prices, lower wages, and it hurt the U.S. economy. Reagan comes along, the economy improves a little bit, and today we are going to take a look at Bush Senior, right? So remember, there were two Bushes in office. There was Bush Senior, right, H.W. Bush, and then there's George W. Bush, who comes later on in 2001, right? So today we're going to look at the economy. If you look at a map of the United States, a lot of the Northeast is composed of manufacturing plants. So at this time, this is where um, a lot of things like vehicles were being created. This was the hub for automobile manufacturing, and so companies like GM and Ford and Buick, they all had manufacturing plants right here in the Northeast. Now, during the early 1990s, late 1980s, what you see is you start to see companies moving out of the United States and moving uh, those plants moving into places like China, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand. These countries, the Philippines, these countries, it's much cheaper to pay people to work in those factories. It's much cheaper for things to be assembled in these factories. And so you see a lot of these big companies that are producing millions of cars each year, and they've picked up and they've moved to other countries. And so what does that do to the economy? Well, essentially what happens is it puts a lot of people out of work. A lot of, tens of thousands of employees who worked in these manufacturing plants now suddenly have no work. My dad, he grew up in a city called Anderson, up in Indiana, and same thing happened to them. I think he told me something like 1 out of every 4 people in the city had a job at one of these manufacturing plants. So whenever they left, it destroyed the local economy, and on a national level, it hurts the economy as well. And so if you go into places, even now, if you go into cities like Detroit, you'll go into neighborhoods that have been abandoned. There's lots of big buildings that used to be businesses that are abandoned. It's because all this industry and this commerce shut down, and they moved to places like China to manufacture. So if you look at this image right here, this is the country of China. This is a graph from the year 2008, and this shows how many manufacturing plants are in China. These are U.S. manufacturing plants. So it could be car manufacturing, or it could be the manufacturing of clothes. So this is just total, right? And it's a lot. It amounts to thousands and thousands and thousands of factories. So this is an image here. It says Japanese exports at the top. And as you can see, computers, TV sets, stereos are leaving Japan and moving into other countries, right? So, at one point, the American economy produced a lot of the goods that we use, right? So television sets back in the 50s, and tires and things like that, most of them were produced here inside the country. Domestically produced. But during the late 80s and the 90s, we start to see a more global economy, and a lot of those things are being manufactured abroad and imported into the United States. And so what ends up happening is you start to see a decline in manufacturing, and you also see a decline in people buying products from American businesses located here in the United States. So let's take a look at this. What we see is, because of this, we see a decrease in spending, and that decrease in spending leads to businesses having to let employees go, right? The idea is that if people don't have a lot of money, they're not going to go out and buy things. And, for example, if there's a local restaurant in your city, if people stop going to that restaurant is first going to have to let employees go, and then eventually they might close. And because of unemployment, and people are not buying things, businesses lose money. And once businesses lose money, they fire people, and then you start to see a decrease in spending. So it's kind of a circle, and it hurts the economy. If people don't have money, they're not going to stores. And if stores don't get money, they're going to let people go. And if they let people go, then people stop spending. And it's a kind of a hurtful cycle. So under the first section, let me open this real quick. So under this first section, it says changes in U.S. production. As U.S. factories have moved overseas to countries like Japan and then China, an imbalance in trade has developed. Today, the U.S. imports, or we buy, more goods than we export or sell. So what I want you to do is I want you to watch that Bush economics video. First question says, what percentage did unemployment rise to? So make sure you listen for that. Why was President Bush unwilling to extend unemployment benefits? Why did he say no to unemployment benefits? What was the reason for that? And number 3, was this the right decision for Bush to make? Was it the right decision for him to not extend unemployment benefits? Why or why not? So go ahead and watch the video. I'm going to pause here. All right, so let's move into section 2. If you need more time, go ahead and pause the video, and then let's pick up on economic recession in section 2. The United States gradually moved back into a recession by 1990. The recession was caused by a general decrease in spending and greater foreign competition. both of which led to less demand for some American products. This resulted in layoffs in several key industries. President H.W. Bush was not able to significantly decrease the nation's deficit or improve the U.S. economy. So the global economy is changing. A lot of the things that were produced here in the U.S. are now being produced abroad, and that's hurt our economy. And really, President Bush struggles to improve the U.S. economy during this time. And so there are several things he could have tried, but he really didn't want to mess with the national deficit. And while he decreased spending, it did not help the economy. It didn't help us get out of the economic recession that we were in. So, number one, how does a decrease in consumer spending impact on employment? Remember, if we go back to this chart here, what did we say? Right? We said when people stop buying things, when they stop buying products, businesses have to do what? Just think about it. If companies are not growing, they can't do what? So, number two says, how did the economy impact President H.W. Bush's presidency? What did people think of the president? What did people think of his presidency? Did they think he was doing enough to help the economy? How did the economy impact President H.W. Bush's presidency? How do people view him? And number three, what could President Bush have done differently to help the economy? So we know we talked about how spending impacts unemployment, right? What do you think President Bush could have done differently to help the economy? We know that he cuts back on unemployment benefits during this time, so people aren't able to go out and buy things. What do you think you should have done differently to help the economy? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause right here. You pause your video, answer those questions, and then we'll continue. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. So in this same stretch of time, if we're looking at domestic issues going on at home, we see kind of some social issues going on. One of the most famous of these issues was the LA riots of 1992. I am oversimplifying this, but I'm going to make a very long story short, okay? In 1991, there was a young African American man. He had apparently broken his parole, and he was on a high-speed chase with LA police officers. Eventually, his name's Rodney King. Rodney King is stopped by the police. He's pulled out of his car, and then he's beaten by 4 white police officers. The result of this was, this is a picture of Rodney King. The result of this was basically 4 of these police officers were put on trial in LA. The reason we know that this happened to Rodney King was because there was a man who lived in an apartment across the highway from where this was happening, and he worked in the television industry, so he just so happened to have a tape recorder. At this point, it's very rare that people had recorders at their home. Tape recorders were kind of big, clunky, and so it's not like today. You can't just pull out, in 1991, you couldn't pull out your phone and, record a video. It was exceptional. It was an exceptional circumstance that this man had a video recorder on him. So he records it. It's sent to the news press, and LA County does an investigation, and basically these 4 officers go on trial, and they are acquitted. The jury itself comprised mostly of white jurors. And there were no African Americans on this jury. So they acquit. They don't charge any of these 4 officers, and as a result, the city bursts into riots. This is a really interesting moment in American history because it really shows the racial tensions that are going on inside the United States, especially in big cities like LA. 1992, these riots erupt. 63 people die overall. There's between $800 million and $1 billion worth of damages. 3,600 fires are set. 1,100 buildings are destroyed. Massive amount of damage. Lots of violence, and you actually see violence between different ethnic groups during this time. So it's an extremely violent period. It's an extremely violent episode, but this violence was brought on by it was brought on by really a system, or it was brought on by the fact that many people within minority communities saw the justice system as failing them, and so this was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? This was the spark that started the fire, so to speak. And so this really highlighted racial tensions in the United States. So what I want you to do is I want you to watch the 4 videos I've posted. That's going to give you an idea of the LA race riots. It's also going to give you a little more information on Rodney King. So let's look at this section. This third section says Los Angeles race riots / Rodney King. So it says riots erupted in Los Angeles and other cities in 1992 when the jury found policemen not guilty even though they were videotaped beating a young African American man named Rodney King. These riots showed racial tensions still existed in the U.S. So make sure that you answer these 3 questions. It says, based on this video, how would you describe the LA race riots? So make sure you watch the video so that you can give an accurate description of that. Number 2 says, how did the Rodney King verdict impact the music industry? So that video under let me see, it should be LA riots 2. These race riots impact the music culture. And so in what way did they impact music culture, and what sort of music came out of these riots? What was the significance of the LA race riots? It's right there in your reading, so make sure you read that. Last section here, it says George H.W. Bush appeal for common reason after the LA riots 1991. The only thing I would say about this is an appeal for common reason in the community. The court system has worked. What's needed now is calm, respect for the law, let the appeals process take place. I think citizens of goodwill are of the same view. So basically, after the verdict is handed out in LA, President Bush comes out and he makes the statement. He says, we have a system of laws in place. This has gone through the legal system. Let this process take place, and basically, good citizens will understand this is how the court system works. So number 1 says, according to the excerpt, how did Bush want Americans to respond to the verdict of the Rodney King trials? Number 2, why did many Americans disagree with George H.W. Bush's statement about Rodney King's trial? What was according to many Americans, what was the issue with just letting the system work out? Okay. So that's it, guys. I wanted this video to be brief. If you have questions or you need help, please feel free to email me. Please, guys, please make sure you are getting the work done so I can give you credit for this, okay? If you need anything else, there's plenty of ways you can contact me: Edmodo, email, Google Classrooms. All right, so this is going to be due at 11:59 tomorrow, Tuesday. So you've got 2 days to do this, guys. Have a safe, wonderful Monday, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Bye, guys.